I'm not sure that President Trump is going to be president before the year's over. I think he may well be gone. And that's not simply because of this utterly stupid and futile campaign against Iran. It's because the global impact of this, as we've been discussing,
Right.
all the Straits of Hormuz are an economic lifeline for countries like India, and they're not the only ones. We're going to see most of them into it. I don't think it's something that we can sustain. Now, casualties, I don't think we know what's happened. In my experience, in my short strategy at work at all, we are basically trying to bomb a country that is the size of Western Europe with 93 million people into submission to Mr. Netanyahu's demands. There's no strategy. That's what we're trying to do. There is no end state other than the likely eventual disintegration or destruction of Iran, which is ultimately what we're trying to achieve at this point. Now, whether or not we achieve it, that's another matter, but I think that's the desired end state, barring any sudden capitulation by Iran. And the sad part is the world is suffering. This is a global economic catastrophe. You've stopped virtually everything from flowing in and out of the Gulf at this point. And I don't think you can put the United States Navy into the Gulf with the goal of protecting shipping. I think we'd simply offer up our ships for destruction. So we're not dealing with reality at the moment. The Iranians right now, Iranian missiles are striking all over Israel at roughly 4,000 miles per hour. A single Iranian drone flew more than 1,000 miles and destroyed a British air base in Cyprus, was never even identified or detected. And Iran has at least 10,000 of those, and the number is rising. And I think we have, 500 interceptor missiles left in the theater. And, as I think others have pointed out, you've got to go out of the theater practically either all the way to Diego Garcia or India, or if you're in the Mediterranean, back to Europe to reload. And I don't see any evidence that this war is going to anytime soon. The bigger issue for me, though, Judge, right now is the economy. President Trump did not pick up the phone and call Prime Minister Modi in India or the Prime Minister in Japan or the President in South Korea, let alone Xi, obviously, about whom he obviously doesn't care, and ask the question, look, we're considering military action. What will be the effect on you? Is this going to damage you? Well, right now, I'd say it's very damaging to both Japan and South Korea, horrendously damaging. Both of them import between 60 and 70% of their petroleum from the Persian Gulf. Now, China gets 50%, but the Chinese have built up enormous strategic reserves. So this is going to affect them very much. And in the meantime, they're building new pipelines coming out of Russia. By the way, Russia is doing a land office business. Everybody that needs oil is turning to Russia. So if our goal was to enrich Russia, make it stronger and more effective, gosh, I think we've managed that.
Can any of these objectives at all be achieved? The destruction of all of Iran's offensive weaponry, which I understand the vast majority of it hasn't been used yet or even revealed. It's still underground. I thought the destruction of the nuclear capability obliterated was taken care of in June. And a persuasion of the Iranian people who are now united after the murder of the Ayatollah that they should take over their government and toss the government out and put in somebody friendly to the Trump administration. These are not realistic goals, are they?
No, we've always been delusional on that score. And we in the world are sliding now into global recession. That's certainly not going to make us terribly popular. It's certainly not going to hasten the end of the war for the purposes that we're waging it. But we may ultimately have to pull out because of enormous pressure from the rest of the world that says, you've created a disaster, you've got to leave. That could happen. I think right now there are other things about which the administration is not talking. I think our era of local or regional hegemony in the Middle East is over. I think we're going to be swept completely out of the Persian Gulf. Now, will the Persian Gulf be rebuilt? Probably. Will someone finance it? I guess so. But there are going to be new rules, and we're not going to be there. I mean, why would you welcome us back in? Because the population certainly doesn't want us there. That's increasingly obvious. The ruling elites wanted us there on the assumption that we would protect them. Well, we've turned out to be incapable of protecting them. So this whole notion of deterrence has been lost. And I don't think this bombing campaign is going to restore it. So right now, this whole thing is burning down the economy. Everything that needs petroleum is absent from all the major countries in the world except ourselves, and to some extent also in Egypt, or excuse me, Europe. So I don't see us achieving the real goal, which is that we have a sort of Battleship Missouri ceremony where Trump steps up and accepts the surrender of Iran. I don't see that occurring, and I don't think the Chinese and the Russians will let that occur.
What will the Chinese and Russians do if it looks as though the United States is effectively degrading the infrastructure and governmental structures in Iran?
Well, China has, of the two, the greatest interest in the permanent survival of the Iranian state and nation. They're not going to welcome any attempts to break it up. The Russians won't like it either. Now, the Russians want to finish up the war in Ukraine, and I think that's their primary focus. I think the Chinese will continue to provide whatever intelligence support, whatever missiles, whatever technical support that they can. They do have some Chinese pilots on the ground who could conceivably fly Iranian aircrafts, and some of those aircraft are of Chinese manufacture. I don't think it's gotten to the point yet where that is seen as a necessity. We really haven't made a dent in this enormous missile arsenal. The missiles are continuing to land on Israel without much difficulty. And I think they're going to continue to try and hit us at sea. Now, we're pulling back and as far away as we can get to hopefully stay out of range, but we're discovering that some of these missiles have a greater range than we really anticipated. So I think right now, Moscow and Beijing are watching carefully to see where this goes. But we should be careful in the United States not to declare victory. Yes, I'm sure we have air supremacy in the northwest of the country. We may have it increasingly in other areas, but air superiority alone has not guaranteed